This is the No Stroke Podcast with your co-hosts David Dancero and Michael Garrow, helping you to support and thrive in life after stroke. Their podcast is designed for educational and community support purposes only and should not replace medical treatment and guidance of your own health professional team.
Welcome to episode 33 of the No Stroke Podcast. My name's Dave Dancero. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Garrow. Good evening, Mike.
Hey, David. How you doing? I had a presentation the other day for work, and the title of it was End of Summer Bash. It was we're here,
We're here.
A couple months away from October.
And already, Mike, we're back into pumpkin spice mode. Don't get me started, but we had that discussion back when.
It's the Rhode Island, Massachusetts crew who just love the Dunkin' Donuts everywhere you go. So
there you go. Do you mind, Mike? Do you mind if I start with some numbers? Because the theme around today's show and with our guests is definitely we talked a lot about numbers and the importance of numbers, and I want to start with, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. Okay, 40%, 25%. And I'm going to throw in number 31, and I'll have you explain that one. But in this episode, and I'll let you introduce the guest shortly, she made me reflect on some of the numbers around stroke and stroke facts, and she personalized these numbers to her own recovery and her survivorship. But early on, when we started this discovery and our mission here at Stroke, we were really, when we were really researching what is the problem around stroke. I'll put some data behind those numbers. Every 40 seconds, someone suffers a stroke here in the US. Every 4 minutes, someone dies of a stroke. 40% of stroke survivors, there's no known cause. We don't know what caused their stroke. And for 25% of that affected population, they'll have another stroke. So those are the numbers, and that's part of the mission that, we've been on to try to support folks that have been affected by stroke and improve life after stroke. And I don't want to throw you a curveball, because the 31 has nothing to do with stroke. The 31 is a flashback, because I saw your post about flashing back and really bringing in some of the episodes. But 31, we were supposed to have a special episode. This is 33, so we missed it by a little. We had a guest that had to reschedule from Ireland, but 31 is a number that resonates with you. Tell us about it.
So, a big thing with basketball, right? Everybody needs their lucky number, or at least they try. Any sport, right? It's either your favorite player's number, whatever it might be. For me, I never had that kind of superstition of numbers or anything. I didn't really mind. So when I was in high school, my freshman year, first day of tryouts, I was sick as a dog. I mean, couldn't get out of bed, and I wasn't faking it. I was sick. But again, I tried to get to school because it was the first day of basketball tryouts. And I was terrified, I wouldn't make the team because I wasn't there to try out, and I was sick. So fortunately, my coach, knew me. Growing up, he was my 8th grade PE teacher. So we had a good relationship. He was like, Mike, don't worry, you'll make the team. He actually he told my mom, because my mom rang him to be like, Michael's sick and is trying to go to school just so he can make it. Can you please tell him? Can you please tell him just to stay in bed? Thanks to Mark Fowler for getting me onto the freshman team. But I wasn't there. I couldn't make the whole, and not many people liked it, but I didn't make the entire week of tryouts, but still kind of brought me on. And with that, I wasn't there to pick my jersey number originally. So my best friend, Mike Dorash, who lived down the road from me, picked the number 13. Unlucky 13, right? Some people say. But I didn't mind. I was like, all right, we'll go with it. So I wore 13 my whole high school career. And then when I went over to college, again, didn't really care what number I had. But I was like, you know what? We'll make the flip. We're going from 13. Let's do 31. So I was 31 my whole college career. And yeah, I mean,
All
it's
right.
just a number that's kind of sat with me. Yeah.
And speaking of unlucky, I learned something from our podcast guest, because for me, my game was hockey, and of course here in New England, I played defense, and of course I had to be number 4, Bobby Orr. But after hearing our guests, I'm learning that with that number comes some superstition, and we'll let our guests tell us about that. But I'm rethinking and realizing maybe that's why I wasn't a very good goal scorer. Maybe it was unlucky, and that's why I had to turn to fighting and other ways to bring my game into relevance. I guess.
It sounds like a reasonable excuse, Dave.
So, rough transition into our guest today. Would you mind? Do you have any? So I gave those numbers at the beginning because, again, 2 weeks in a row, I've been a little off in the news. So do you have?
You got your kids in school trying to big life changes, so it's all good. I do have one thing. I just want to give a quick shout out to some of our Irish listeners, particularly Martin Quinn. So Martin Quinn is from Tipperary. He's stroke survivor and one of the leading advocates for stroke in Ireland. He was able to the national plan for stroke, the coordination they published that I don't think yearly, maybe every 5 years. I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, it's been delayed, right? And as part of I'm sure a result of the pandemic and the hospital system just being strained. But Martin has done a lot of advocacy and was able to actually get the Minister for Health and as well as Dr. Ronan Collins, who's the previous clinical director for stroke, or national clinic director for stroke in Ireland, as well as some other leaders within stroke, onto a call to really talk through and be like, this needs to happen and get pushed forward. So, kudos to Martin and the rest of the Irish community there, who really give it their all in terms of trying to advance stroke rehab in the country. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that. And hopefully we'll be able to take a look at the results of that national strategy here in the coming months. But yeah, kudos to Martin. So yeah, let's kind of turn into the guest today. So I've kind of given my story with stroke, with my mother, who had an ischemic stroke at the age of 28. And fascinating enough, my girlfriend now, Megan, is also a caregiver for her mother who had a stroke around a similar age. But her mom had what's called a Moyamoya, right? And a Moyamoya, as we learned today, is 1 in 100,000. So it's very, very rare that this condition happens. They call it a puff of smoke because, unlike a hemorrhagic, which is blood vessel bursting, or an ischemic, which is more of the block, a Moyamoya is more of a slow leak, right? So you'll have similar symptoms of a stroke, but when you go to do the CT scan or MRI scan, it comes back more and it looks like a puff of smoke in the brain, right? And Moyamoya in Japanese means puff of smoke. So that's kind of how it's come together. But I really been keen to get a guest on who could speak to Moyamoya, whether it's survivor, and hopefully, we could now look to maybe bring in Orlena's therapist and neurologist, who was one of the leading experts in Moyamoya and really supported her on this journey. But yeah, I was able to find Orlena Shek. Orlena is based in California, Asian Pacific woman who really earlier in life was a successful lawyer, and at the age of 34, you'll hear her tell her story, suffered this Moyamoya and really was in a battle for about a year in and out of rehab with young kids as well. So it's been it's been a nice way to kind of get this together for me, and hear from, an expert within Moyamoya, and, hopefully we could connect Megan's mom with Orlena and the support groups that are out there specific to Moyamoya. And if there's anyone else, who have listened and, might have had a Moyamoya, but don't really know where to turn, I think you'll love today's guest. She's an author. She's inspiring and has done a lot of public speaking on this topic. So yeah, funny enough, you'll hear it was her first podcast, but she nailed it. She nailed it.
Yeah. And Mike, I want to give credit to you for doing the research, and really, I know this is important to you to bring this point of view on and share this her story and making those connections to do this. So thank you, Mike. And let's without further ado, let's bring her in, and we kind of talked about the theme around numbers at the beginning, but she has some really powerful theme numbers that she's going to bring into her story when we let her in here. So let's do that. Go.
Hi, Orlena. Welcome to the No Stroke podcast.
Hi, Michael. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. It's so nice to see you. I know we had a short little intro call the other day to get familiar with each other. We first kind of connected a couple months back. But yeah, for our listeners, we gave a bit of an intro again, and to kind of line up, your background and kind of what brought us together. But do you want to give a short, synopsis of, your background?
Sure. I'm Orlena Shek. I'm a double brain surgery stroke survivor. Last year marked the 10-year anniversary of my stroke due to a rare condition called Moyamoya Disease. During the pandemic, I joined a Facebook support group, and to commemorate the 10-year anniversary, I banded with 20 other health warrior poets to come out with this book. And you may want to ask why I chose to publish last year when I turned 44. Well, I'm Chinese American, and 4 is the unlucky number because it's homonymous with the meaning of death. So 44 is 2 4s. That's the worst number you could possibly have. But if you add them together, it turns out to be 8, which happens to be the luckiest number in Chinese culture. So my whole philosophy is taking something bad, like 2 number 4s, and turning it into something wonderful and good, like 8.
That's so interesting, Elena. You had some other numbers that we talked about before we started recording, and they kind of tell your story. Do you mind sharing those other numbers? Do you have those?
Yeah, absolutely. So today I will share my stroke survival journey and show how you can survive a medical condition, in my case, a stroke, and turn it around to accomplish anything you want, all by using a mind over matter mindset. But first, let's kick off with some numbers. 14, 6, 3.5, 3, 2, 1,800, 136, 2, 1. 14 ambulance rides within 5 months, 6-week hospitalization at Stanford, 3.5 weeks in the medically induced coma, 3 different acute rehab hospital stays ranging from Marin to Santa Clara County, 2 10-hour plus brain surgeries a week apart, 1,800 paper origami cranes folded by countless coworkers, neighbors, and friends. More than 100 nights spent hospitalized away from home. 2 children, firstborn pre-stroke, secondborn post-stroke. 1 trip to Las Vegas by myself for a bachelorette party. As you can see, these aren't lottery numbers, but maybe I should play the lottery. But they're numbers that add color to my life. Once upon a time, I was an in-house lawyer, specializing in open source, working at Sun Microsystems and then NetApp. But suddenly, one day, my career fell apart just because of a little accident that happened about a decade ago. On Tuesday, December 29th, 2011, I had a massive hemorrhagic stroke due to Moyamoya while driving my daughter on the freeway. At the time, she was 21 months old, and I was working full-time as an in-house lawyer at NetApp. I remember it was a Thursday because on Thursdays I could work from home. I was trying to find an outfit for her for New Year's when I started to drive erratically on the freeway, and I thought this was very strange. I better get off the freeway. But as I was pulling off, I actually lost control of the car, hit the center divider, all the airbags deployed. My daughter freaked out, had never seen so many airbags before. A good Samaritan called 911 for me and my nanny. My nanny came and took her home. My sister and brother were home for the holidays, so I asked them to come get me. They picked me up, dropped me off at home. It was just kind of strange if you think about it. Why did they do that? They should have taken me to the hospital. But, anyways, they dropped me off at home. I felt horrible. So I thought, I need an ambulance. I dialed 911 and said, I need an ambulance immediately. Hung up the phone, collapsed on my living room floor. The ER that I was taken to happened to have a Moyamoya neurosurgeon on duty that night who had practiced under the leading Moyamoya neurosurgeon in the world at Stanford. He saved my life by diagnosing Moyamoya and sent me to Stanford, where I had 2 brain surgeries about 5 months later, and I came home for Mother's Day. It's quite a story. I wonder if any of you here on this podcast have ever heard of Moyamoya before. I can't see if there's a show of hands, but I'm assuming you probably haven't heard of it because it only happens in 1 in 100,000. I always tell my husband that I'm 1 in a million. It's a progressive cerebrovascular disorder caused by blocked arteries at the base of the brain. Moyamoya actually means a puff of smoke in Japanese. I'm a lawyer by training, and the fact that I was able to pass that 3-day California bar exam when I never even had enough blood to the brain is incredible. I mean, no wonder it was so hard. Although this all sounds very bleak and dark, having a stroke has brought more color into my life in ways I never imagined possible. After my stroke, I would spend about 6 months in and out of rehab hospitals to learn how to walk and talk again. I now have weakness on the left side and walk with a cane. Unfortunately, due to foot drop, I'll probably have to wear a brace for the rest of my life, but that's okay. I have Nike free shoes in every color. After my accident, my husband took on a second job because I was covering all the benefits for the family as an in-house lawyer. My daughter had to grow up a lot faster because she suddenly had a mom that was disabled and who was in the hospital for most of her first year of life. As a result, she's an extremely empathetic 12-year-old from having a mom that's disabled. My mother-in-law quickly formed Team Orlena after my accident, comprising of family members that would have weekly check-in meetings to chart my progress and to help support me. When I was in the hospital, my coworkers from Sun Microsystems and NetApp banded together to fold 1,000 cranes. Legend has it that if you have 1,000 cranes, the sacred crane will grant its wish and the person will get better. A watershed moment in my rehab occurred 7 years ago when my therapist taught me how to put on my brace and shoes by myself. And guess who flew to Las Vegas by herself for a bachelorette party? My husband even bought me a suitcase for my birthday that year. I even found a therapeutic gym in Burlingame that has the adaptive equipment that I can use, and I'm there every day of the week. But 4 years ago, this little gym was on the brink of closure. So as a last-ditch effort, the city of Burlingame held a town hall. So I talked about how I needed this gym because I had to have the adaptive equipment that only this gym had. I can't exercise at 24-hour fitness or the YMCA. I mean, look at me. I ended up getting a standing ovation, and someone told me to run for mayor of Burlingame. End result, they kept the gym open. And last I checked with my neurosurgeon, the Moyamoya vessels have disintegrated from non-use. And so the likelihood of another stroke from Moyamoya will be very unlikely. And eventually I'll be fine. So this is the best part. The thing about my rehab though is after I came home and had my stroke, I had to stay in three different acute rehab hospitals around the Bay Area. That was really hard. All I wanted to do was bust out of the hospital. This one hospital I was in Kentfield in Marin County. Beautiful grounds. Outside was gorgeous forest, but all I wanted to do was bust out. And interestingly enough, when I was in the hospital, there happened to be a high security inmate from a nearby prison who was also housed in my hospital. My parents freaked out. They hired a caregiver to be there 24/7, so I was never by myself. Meanwhile, I was still trying to plot my way out of there.
That I could imagine that your parents were like, what in the world
I
is
know.
my daughter having to go through with an inmate there? But listen, you've given us a lot to unpack here. I'd love
Yeah.
to go back
Sure.
to a couple things, right?
Yeah.
First, out of your 93 shoes in your closet, what's your
Yeah.
favorite?
Oh my gosh. So the best shoes actually are New Balance because they can accommodate two different sizes. So on the left side, I wear size 10, which I have my AFO or my foot brace to protect my foot because I don't have the muscle to pull it forward to walk as a
Right.
result of the stroke. But the brace holds my foot in place to allow me to take that step. And Nordstrom and New Balance, they allow me to have two sizes big on the left side and the right side smaller. And I don't have to pay for two shoes. They'll give me half the price back.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah,
It
I
is
know.
really nice.
Yeah, I know when we first connected, I mentioned, how, I was doing a lot of research into Moyamoya because
That's right.
my girlfriend's mother who had the stroke, and, just everything you just mentioned there with, the brace and the foot drop, like the complexities that,
Totally.
wearing the brace full time really causes. I mean, we're just now trying to go through and order a new brace for it, kind of get the right fitting, and
Oh, really?
so many things that kind of go into this. But let's kind of touch on your rehab, right? You were mentioning that I want to bust out of this place.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, having to be inpatient, and you were probably surrounded, at the time, kind of going back to, again, my mother having a stroke at a very young age. She was put into a rehab facility with, quote unquote, well, at the time, I mean, they were older people than her. She was 28 years old.
Right.
So talk through that rehab, like the inpatient experience. Like, what was your day to day? Did they have you in intensive rehab right away, or because you had that surgery?
Great question. There's only a few acute rehab hospitals in the Bay Area, and I basically stayed at all of them. One was in Kempfield, one was at Santa Clara Valley, which also has a great rehab program. So I had to go through that whole acute rehab situation. Basically, as a patient, your best friend is a nurse. So there was nurses I would just flirt with. I'd be like, if you change my diaper, I'll take you out to lunch because it's so important to have the interaction. I really loved my nurses so much. So that was my acute rehab hospital situation. And then going home, there was a great company called Rehab Without Walls. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't heard. Maybe they're just East Coast.
They're West Coast,
West
and they
Coast.
come to your home. They work all disciplines: speech, occupational, which is your hand, and then physical, which is your leg. And they help you at home to integrate you back to society. And at the very end, they actually took me on Burlingame Avenue to help me how I would actually integrate back into the real world.
Right. Instead of like the plush of the home, like being in a real world setting, kind of, but having that support and someone next to you. That's brilliant. What was the name? What was the name of that group again?
It's called Rehab Without Walls. Being the idea is that they come home and help you. The rehab is there. You don't need to go somewhere. It's in your own home. And then at the very end, you graduate when they take you outside into the real world. And then they find me an outpatient. So after Rehab Without Walls, I was so sad that I had to go to a local rehab in outpatient. But get this, it was Mills Peninsula. I have been going there for 10 years. So since Rehab Without Walls, I went there.
We don't, where is that, like a beautiful, gorgeous place, or what's that? I don't
It's not Kentfield. It's not like Kentfield Hospital. It's in my local area. It's affiliated with the hospital that my daughter was born in, but it's separate. It's only rehab. And then I went there for after my stroke. I went there when I wanted to learn how to take stairs. I went there before my second baby. And I've been going there, like, now I'm still patients there again because I want to work on something new.
Yeah.
And so one of my most amazing motivational talks was at that therapy place. I stood in front of them. I said, it takes speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy to be able to stand here in front of you today. So thank you, A, B, and C, those three therapists who were there. I mean, these people brought me to this point. So that was one of the most powerful speeches because it was truly those three individuals who made it happen for me to be there.
Orlena, it sounds like along the way you've definitely become an advocate. And I would have liked to have been in that conversation when you stepped up and advocated for the right, keeping that gym open in Burlingame because it had the equipment that you needed.
Yeah, like the gym you're at right now.
There was, and this, yes, and much the same. Um, how how important was that in your recovery? You talked about your length of stay, and that I think in the numbers that you presented, you were over 160 some odd days.
Yeah.
In different phases and different facilities, some better than others. How reflecting back now, how important was the advocacy is part of what you're doing now? And I'd love to kind of bring that into your book and why you took the
Yeah.
next chapter to kind of tell your story through poetry in your book. But can you talk about a little bit about you did a great job explaining Moyamoya. This is your first time we've had someone with Moyamoya
Yeah.
on, so it's been great that you've been able to describe that in such detail for our community. How when did it kind of resonate with you that you needed to be that voice for the community?
Oh, because it's not true that only old people have stroke. For instance, my nephew collapsed at school the other day because he had multiple strokes. He doesn't have moyamoya, thank goodness. He has another rare diagnosis called CNS vasculitis. So stroke is just everywhere, and so people just need to be aware. And so when I realized my own nephew had a stroke, I thought, wow, people need to know about stroke. It's happening everywhere. And it's not just Moyamoya, it could be anything. And it could be any age as well. It just needs to be raising awareness. And even when I cross the street in San Francisco, the lights are so fast. There's just so many struggles. I mean, all my friends that are with me, they're like, this is not long enough of a light. There should be more rights for disability, for people who are disabled. This world is not easy to navigate. So there's just so many things that happen for people. And now that I'm in that position, I see it more and more. And I think raising awareness about stroke and rare disease all combines to give people more awareness in general. So things can be easier for us to live in. Oh, but I have good news though. Last summer, I went to Hawaii, and unfortunately, the hotel room that they gave us, and we were at a luxury resort, did not have an ADA facility. So it was very hard for me to take a shower, and I really did was reluctant to get into the swimming pool because I knew how challenging it would be to take a shower. We ended up writing a letter to them, and they felt so bad that the following summer they comped us 3 nights and they invited me to speak in front of their senior management. So this past summer I went back, but I didn't tell them that I went back because I was not given a room. I just told them that, thank you for having accessible rooms and accessible pools so people like me can enjoy your facilities. And I got to do my whole story, and it was so neat to be able to fly there to do this talk. So that was so deeply meaningful, just to be able to raise awareness. But I didn't tell them the reason why I came back was because they didn't give it to me last summer. But
Well,
still,
Orlena, you seem very I know, again, before we recorded, you were saying this is my first podcast
yeah,
that I've been on. But listen, you've been host. I saw your video on it was a local news network. I mean, you've been
yes,
doing all these talks. So
yeah,
again, like, you've just been able to really establish your voice as a, advocate for especially Moya community. But
totally.
I'd love to, now kind of take a step in, like, you know, as all the advocacy work you've done, like, at what point did you make the transition to say, I want to do something, with a book and kind of
Oh,
make this connection? So let's talk about the book now.
this is so fascinating. So, this whole pandemic has all affected us, right?
Hmm.
During the pandemic, I joined a Moya Facebook group led by a woman named Tara McKennis, who has a really fascinating story herself. And suddenly, I noticed so many Moya patients sharing poetry. And I thought, hey, I love poetry. What if, but I lacked the organizational skills to write my own book after the stroke. So I thought, why don't I pull together these different poems and throw in a few of my own and see what happens? I ended up getting 44, which I told you about, which was actually my age last year. And I found a publisher called Simon Schuster, which has a self publishing arm called Archway. They were interested. And so last year I pulled it together and it got published on May 13th, right in time for Stroke Awareness Month. And it's been fabulous ever since then. And all my talks have been much more compelling now because I've done something with my life besides survive. And it's been so fun because I've gotten to know other survivors. I mean, there's a woman who has lupus who's in the book, and I saw her out because her poetry is wonderful. And I try to put more than four. She says, Orlena, I gave you permission only to do two. But I can maybe read one of her poems if you don't mind. It's so compelling.
Yeah, that would be great.
Her poem is interesting because it's called Survivor. And it's beautiful because it says, yes, I'm a survivor. With every breath I will be, but it is as a fighter, I pray you will remember me, not for my life struggles, but for the way I gave them beauty. How haunting is that? I mean, when you read something like that, it's pretty speechless. So I'm
And it
excited.
was,
Each poem has an author spotlight afterwards with a picture of the author. So it
yeah,
really pulls together these people who are in the book.
yeah, it's beautifully done. I'm looking through it here now, and there's just, I love the way you were able to pull the bios and like the images of the
Oh, you have
actual
the
people
book?
who
That's
wrote.
great. I didn't know you had
Yeah,
it.
yeah, right here, right here. But and so how about the name? It's a very, very good, well thought through name for this book. Do you want to share the name and
Sure.
kind of your
So,
inspiration?
yeah, Moyamoya means a puff of smoke in Japanese, the country of its origin. So the book is called Emerging from the Smoke, a collection of warrior voices. And the cover of the book is actually a Moyamoya brain that's turned into a puff of smoke with warriors emerging from it. And I'm one of the warriors. And the Moya Moya blue is the official blue color of the book. And then inside the first page and the last page are in gold because as I was mentioning, I'm Chinese American, and a lot of people in that culture believe in having these certain elements. The one element that was missing when I was born was the element of metal. So my parents said we should replenish her with metal. So they named me Orlena, which means gold. So the first page and the last page should be gold. I don't know if they made it that happen, but that's kind of the meaning behind the book and the cover as well.
That's
And the whole
beautiful.
book is, yeah, it's really a love letter to my parents who didn't make it to my 10-year anniversary.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I mean, just to have something like this, for everything you've been through and,
Yeah.
others, and you really, it wasn't just, your story and your, like, you encapsulated it, but you really brought that sense of community and others to kind of be involved and share their stories, in such a unique way. And for survivors who, again, might not be able to sit and read a whole book,
Yeah.
like struggle, like it's beautifully just, short kind of handwritten poems that, really touch and kind of share a story. So yeah, it's it's again something like when I saw your story, I was doing so much research into Moya Moya,
Yeah.
and when I came across you, I was just like, this is a girl we need to talk to.
I'm so happy to be part of this.
Absolutely.
It's certainly, to write a book like that is such a touching tribute to your parents, and it must be very rewarding to actually see Mike holding your book there.
Totally is.
How does your family, how do your children, how does your husband feel about uh, you being an author now?
They're happy that I took something that could have been really tough and turned it into something beautiful and remarkable. And that was the whole point of this, that anything is possible. Even those days when I'm in bed and I'm trying to ingratiate myself with the nurses because those are my interactions, there was totally a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's being able to survive that and to take something potentially bad and turn it into something wonderful and good and to bring it to the rest of the world, which is what I think I did. And that was the point.
You're definitely doing that. And what's next on your roadmap for how do you continue to expand your audience? We're so grateful. This is your first podcast. You've done a
Yeah.
wonderful job sharing your story and your mission. How would someone get a hold of you to, if they wanted to reach out to you, have them, to maybe have you present to their group?
My website is now live. It's just my name, orlenashek.com. So orlenashek.com. And that's a great way to reach out to me and also see what else I've been up to. I also recently did an interview for CBS, as you may have seen. And so all the information's there. And there's resources about Moyamoya and stroke. So there's a lot of stuff in there that I want to spread the word about. And that's kind of my whole thing right now.
Very cool. Well, we'll be sure to share, all those resources in the show notes, kind of push them out on social so people could get in touch. Because, all the work that we do for, the stroke community,
Yeah.
I feel like, Moyamoya survivors, as well as like an even tighter knit group, right? Because it's so rare, you want to, be able to share that story. So again, I'm really thankful that you were able to come on the show today and share your story and hopefully, connect with others and help them through this journey. But before we end, we normally ask a magic wand question, but I think we're going to instead read a couple more of these poems. So maybe if you want to read through a couple, and maybe since I have the book here in my hand, I'll read one as well.
Yeah. I can read maybe a few of my own really quick.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. One is called Flowers Emerge into the Fold. Dandelions whisper through the void to uncover the darkness and let free the moon. In those quiet waves of strength, you know how much you are worth. It's very brief. Then other one is wash away the heaviness that lines the contours of your soul until it's as light as an alabaster sunset. Forest fires may burn amid a pandemic. During times like this, you fight to rewrite each story into a triumph. I forgot the name of that one, but I thought that was good because it's timely. It talks about the forest fires in California. That was a time we can all remember.
Ooh, yes. Well, when aren't there forest fires in California? But
I know it's a real problem these days, right?
I know. All right, here I'll go with one from Angie Shea.
Yes.
Survivor. Yes, I am a survivor. With every breath, I will be. But it is as a fighter, I pray you will remember me. Not for my life struggles, but for the way I gave them beauty.
Love that one.
Yeah. This is just such a beautiful thing to have. And see these faces of the folks who shared their thoughts, their words. So I would love, we could do an episode just in reading through every poem, I think.
You're right.
But yeah, no, it's really been a pleasure, and I do recommend everyone please go out, so support Orlena here, purchase her book, and share it with your loved ones.
The proceeds of the book, there's a percentage that goes to the Pacific Stroke Association.
Oh, look at that. There you go.
The
Perfect.
local organization.
Perfect.
They actually helped me get my start in my speaking, and they're very supportive of local stroke survivors and their families and caregivers.
Perfect. Orlena, I'd love to ask you to take us out with your broken crayon.
Oh, absolutely. My broken crayons quote. You really like that one, huh?
I do.
With Moyamoya, we may all be a little broken, but last I checked, broken crayons still color the same. I'm learning to color new things in my life now. Hopefully, I've added some color to your understanding of stroke survival and that it's not just possible to survive stroke, but also to thrive. Thanks for listening to my story.
And we'll end with that.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Orlena.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Orlena.
Bye.